This weekend is the Dusk Till Dawn pre-release, which means you're drafting Monarch again, or maybe you're lucky and it's actually your first time. But either way, today I'm going to give my tips and tricks for approaching a Monarch draft on your pre-release day, when maybe not everyone in the room is competitive practice and experience. So instead, we'll focus just on the early picks and my takes on the Monarch Limited format. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast, and that's right, Monarch Draft is on the horizon this upcoming weekend. Well, we can all get our scrubby paws on some old Monarch cards and some brand new Dusk Till Dawn cards for the very first time. Set looks pretty cool. It's going to be very interesting to see how the secondary market and all that shapes out, but I think the set's going to be in pretty high demand because there's some it's Prism stuff, let's be honest. The shadow people are coming out of the walls or the floor or the rift or whatever the proper term is there, but I think a lot of people are really stoked for this set, and it's going to be a good weekend. And then the next weekend will be even better because then we'll actually have it in our hands. So what I wanted to do tonight was approach this kind of as my channel. I generally approach things on my channel, which is if you're a normal person who's not going to be doing drafting of Monarch at Nationals or at Worlds or something like that, right? How would you maybe show up, instead of practicing a billion times, how would you maybe show up and kind of have a streamlined approach to being successful on your pre-release day? And by that, I mean sitting down at a table. Instead of coming in with this particular strategy and trying to read the table and stuff, what should you be looking for? Try to take just to kind of maximize your time balance effort. Now, I do want to say there is a fantastic video out there. There's a couple of them out there, but the best one I've seen so far is by Sneap. It came out, 10 days ago or something or so as I'm shooting this. It's a pretty phenomenal video. He actually goes through the draft structure itself. He talks about when you can and can't pivot, when it's too late. Obviously, he talks about specific cards and strategy for each hero, which of course we'll do as well. But his video is really well done from a tactical standpoint. Again, like I said, kind of the fallacy of and by saying the fallacy of the video doesn't mean he's wrong. My point is that for the 80-90% of us who are going to go into this and not be playing a room full of competitive drafters, I think it's best to kind of take a shotgun type approach where you really just kind of look for the things instead of trying to play the players, you play the room, I think is probably the better way to say it. So that's my personal approach on going into your pre-release. I'm not even going to pretend to make a video for again, the Sneap video is something for a Nationals or, but again, go check it out. It's really well done. Very, very smart person. So anyway, let's get into this. So pack one, pick one. I'm just going to say it out of the gate, right? Illusionist is the strong, easy one in this format, right? We've had other formats where Fi was the one you defaulted to. You could kind of force him. Prism is the easy one. Prism's only, from an overall standpoint, Prism is the easy choice. Her only real true major stand-up weakness is Levia. And Levia can be fatigued. Well, not really fatigued, but Levia kills herself sometimes. Because if things just don't work out, she kind of kills herself. So I think that's the play. I mean, Prism's the play. And this is the card. So Dreamweavers, the Illusionist Gloves, if you see this card, I don't care what pick it is. I don't care if it's your third pack, you're balls deep into Boltyn or whatever at that point. Take this card because this card is worth 7 damage. Maybe not 7 damage, but it's worth 7 or more. This card is crazy. Take this card. Do not ever pass this card. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't care if you're playing Illusionist or not. Don't pass this card. So I think that one's this card's so good to just be able to, right, regardless of what else you draft. If you're on Prism, it gives you a turn. You can pair it with a Phantasmifier or something like that. 12 threatened in draft with a blue pitch. I mean, right. Anyway, you get it. Don't pass this card. Do not pass this card. All right. Next up is equipment. Okay. Equipment speaks for itself. I mean, equipment's always the thing that you talk about when you're talking about draft. But this was one of the first sets in which equipment, there wasn't as much generic equipment And actually, that's not a true statement because I actually started getting some more later. But if you look at what I have across the screen right now, you have stuff like either Ironweave, Gallantry Gold. Right? Gallantry Gold is really, really strong for Boltyn because you can block one with it, and then you have it there for your pop-off turn. Because that's kind of what Boltyn, we'll talk about that at the bottom at the end, but that's kind of what Boltyn overall is trying to do, is kind of store up a little bit. And I mean, again, your pop-off turn's not a Lumina turn, probably, unless you get super lucky. But again, you're trying to get a Via Vanguard or something like that, where you can come in and swing twice. You have enough in your soul to, because you're playing hatchets, you'll hatchet, and then those hatchets are worth +1, and that's a big deal. Either Ironweave is very self-explanatory. It blocks for 1 and then gives you 2 resources. Ebb and Fold can potentially save you from dying on a bad turn for Levia. And then Halo of Illumination isn't as crucial, but again, it lets you get cards in your soul. And remember, Prism's Spectral Shields do things. And remember, she's playing Iris Reality. Okay, and again, I don't want to take the wind out of our sails. We'll talk about that a bit later, but focus in on stuff like this. Another one that's good is the Blood Drop Brochade, right? It's a chess piece that's in some cases worth a resource, but it can absolutely do things. I find it's also better it's kind of your back. The reason I don't have it up here is it's kind of your backup to Chane. So either an Ironweave's kind of your first pick, in my opinion, over that. But again, if it comes early, do you grab it? I think you do. Right, and then we have, as a lead into the next one, Stubby Hammers. So Stubby Hammers is another one that, in my opinion, you should not pass. This card, fundamentally, if you really look at it, is best for Boltyn and Chane. Not so useful for Prism and Levia. That said, it's still good. So let's go ahead into the Go Small package, and you can see I have the hero IDs there on who will primarily use them. But we have the Go Small package. Minnow the Dwarf, as we affectionately call him here on Dice Commando. Belittle, Minnowism, and then let's not forget about a lesser played card in constructed formats, but Overload. So Overload has 3, or 3, 2, 1, Dominate for 0, and if it hits, gains Go again. Well, one's coming in for 4 Dominate in limited format. You'll start getting it. Very, very strong. This whole package is super strong. You look at Boltyn, a lot of his cards are 3s. Look at Chane, a lot of his cards are 3s. Completely tracks. I honestly think that this is a very smart... I mean, even, again, like I said, even if you're playing the other 2 where it doesn't synergize with their package super well, being able to belittle and potentially tutor out a blue or something like that is very strong. And again, you have... It's draft. You have to fill out your deck, and it shouldn't be that hard to get a belittle and a Minnowism, or hopefully, and not or, but an Overload as well. Anyway, I think you pick up what I'm laying down. All right, next, let's talk the generic poppers. Okay, so that is a real thing. We talked about Prism's pretty good if you can't popper, and there's only really one hero who has access to consistent poppers, and that's Levia. That said, there are a fair amount of poppers in the set. So we have, from a common and / rare standpoint, so I should say from the more accessible standpoint that you will be more likely to see in your draft pool, you have Stony Wootenhog, super strong there, right? Super strong zest. It sucks out blocks, which is good. We have Rally the Rear Guard, which kind of works for you in the other direction on the defense. We have Pound Town, and then we have Out Muscle as well. All strong picks. Do keep in mind, though, they're only strong picks on their red. Actually, in limited format, Stony Wootenhog might be a strong pick and maybe yellow or something like that. But the others only being 6, I don't think most of these you play them is anything non-red. But be very aware if you see these early. Even if you're Prism, remember, non-illusionist. So even if you're Prism, you need to be able to pop poppers. So it's very relevant. These are very, very, very strong cards. And then, of course, I do want to throw it out there so I don't get blown up. Nourishing Emptiness is absolutely in the set. Super strong card, but it's an M. Chances of it being in your draft pool are low, but it's the same logic, right? It's a red 6. All right, so moving on, Express and Illuminate for Boltyn. These are very strong cards, being 0-4 breakpoints. One charges your soul. The other one on hit goes into your soul, which then gives you a go again in the future. Both of these cards are very strong. I don't really have a ton more to say about these, but just remember that the reds on these, and actually, honestly, the yellow on Illuminate's fine. Express Lightning depends on what depends how late you are, right? But you're going to see the yellows later than the reds, right? So these ones are very good. If you've sat down and you want to go Boltyn or you got a Boltyn pick, make sure to look for these cards. Do keep in mind that Illuminate is a light card, whereas Express Lightning is a light warrior. So if you're choosing between, like if you're in some weird situation where you're choosing between the two, take Illuminate first because it's a better chance, although unlikely that Express Lightning will make it around the table, but it could happen. Right, moving next into some really hot cards for Chane. Now, one thing that you'll notice looking through the set, right, and again, you before you go into this, you want to open up the Mon set and go through it a couple of times and kind of look at what's there and specifically what's not there. And in this case, is Arcane Barrier is very absent in the set. It's nowhere near a problem in the set as it was like in Tales of Aria, where you had repeatable from the weapon, but Chane can close out games with these two cards, Vexing Malice and Arcane Crackle. Now, Vexing Malice is a rare, so you're going to have, of course, have the blue there traditionally, but either way, right, any of this is very strong because you're not playing Vexing Malice for how much it attacks for, you're playing Vexing Malice for what it does in Arcane. On Arcane Crackle, sure, it's only one Arcane, but there's a pretty excellent chance that they don't have AB. It's this exceedingly excellent chance they don't have AB. So these are very, very strong cards. If these are ones that you see either passing around the table, people aren't on Chane, or if you see them early, probably, if you can grab like a Vexing Malice, especially like Vexing Malice with the 2 Arcane, you can grab Vexing Malice early, that probably tells you where you should be going in your draft, unless you have to sacrifice other things to get there. Chane can do dirty things. Okay, and then on top of that, I do want to add Ghostly Visit. I didn't put that on the side, but Ghostly Visit's good for both the Shadow Heroes and even like the red, yellow. I mean, honestly, all of them, because you'll take the blue probably, depending on where it is in your pack rotation. Ghostly Visit's very strong as well because it can just play from Banish Zone. So you can put it in there and then it comes out and goes to your discard. And then actually for Levia, you go back, right? Because it gives you cards in the discard. So good thing there. It's a little way to kind of reduce your blood debt a little bit because it is a way to lose. Like back in the Mon days, we saw a lot of people lose from blood debt, and by that I mean the Mon pre-release, Mon sealed days. So a lot of people lose from blood debt because they just ran out of tricks because can't set up your deck as well, right? You'll fall. Okay, strong stuff there. Next ones I want to talk about together. These do not fit together, but they kind of pair together. So first is Zealous Belting. Zealous Belting's a really strong, honestly, any version of this, the red, yellow, or blue, they all are pretty solid. I've got the red up there, obviously, but with Prism and Levia, you're going to be able to probably make this work. Probably easier with Prism, let's be honest, because that's the way it works. But now, this is not a popper, but it does let you get a pretty consistent second swing in, right? And something that's very, again, important to remember about Prism, for all the people who've been playing Prism for years, right? Remember, you're going to have to put yourself in a different mindset. She doesn't have Luminaris. You're not going to have Luminaris. You're working off Iris, right? So something like Zealous Belton is very strong. And then for the other two heroes, Brandish, to be fair, Brandish actually works for 3 of the 4 heroes. The only one it doesn't really work with, technically, it works actually with Prism as well. But considering it's a blue to make that happen, you pick up what I'm laying down, right? So Brandish is really a 75% card, I think, but really good because on hit, +1. Strong, right? Ravenous Meat Axe for 6. Axe for 6, Galaxy Black for maybe 4, depending on how your things are going. Good. It's a good card, right? And I actually like blue Brandish, right? Because it gives you the blue, and then late game you can stick for 1 and threaten 2, and they have to overblock, and it's still a card. I like it a lot. I think it works really well. Okay, so we have those, and then kind of my last one, again not listed, is Surging Militia. This card is a sleeper card. This card closes out games. Even if it's not, I'm showing the red version, but even if it's not the red, like maybe the yellow, but for 2 and then each one they block makes it get stronger. Early game, it encourages them not to block. Late game, it punishes them for blocking, which is exactly what you want. This card is very strong, and do not is this a pack one, pick one? Absolutely not. But it could very easily be like a pick 3 or a pick 4 or something in that range, right? Very strong card to look at. Do you take this over a popper? I think probably not for the overall course of your tournament. But if you have this in your deck, it'll probably win you a game. This card itself will not win you the game, but this card will close the game. How's that? I think that's a more safe statement. All right, let's go ahead now and talk the specific heroes. So if you're super in on Prism, again, I want to remind you that Iris of Reality is your weapon, right? You are very unlikely to get Luminaris. And then honestly, if you do get Luminaris, are you going to be able to take super advantage of it? I mean, probably some. But to my point on this is, remember when you're drafting Prism, it's not about yellows. You can actually work off of blues. And to that point, Blinding Beam, which is a common, by the way, Blinding Beam is your way to stave off folks popping you. You can put a Blinding Beam in your arsenal. Now, more on that later. But you can put one in your arsenal, and then you can play a 2 for 6, a 2 for 7 with a blue, and then have Blinding Beam if they do pop you. That's very, very, very strong because you're just constantly coming for 1 card for 2, 1 card for 2, 1 card for 2 with the threat there. And if they do go 1 for 1, you play the other one, stick them. It's good, right? Because they would only block 1 card in that case, and then you stick them. So again, remember, you want more blues than you would normally want with a constructed Prism deck. And I mean, obviously, if Iris of Reality didn't tell you that anyway, already with the blue cost, and I think we're there. I think you get it. But don't, Blinding Beam is something we don't see a ton of in constructed, but it's really, really strong because we already showed them up above, there are several poppers in this set to which others have availability, right? It can still surprise you, have Blinding Beam there. Now, last part I want to say on kind of my Blinding Beam thing is I screwed up in one of my this was the Mon pre-release sealed. It was actually when I was playing against Kellen Charles. I screwed up and I didn't realize that I could use Blinding Beam defensively to reduce the cost, or to reduce the attack, of my opponent's card, right? And that stops you from getting your arsenal jammed up, right? So that was a very big mistake on my part, but something I hope you don't make as well. Blinding Beam also effectively blocks. Now, you have to pay for it, kind of like a defense reaction and that sort of like an Oasis Respite or something like that. It's very similar to that. But the fact that it has dual purpose, you should not be afraid to go ahead and stick it in your arsenal and keep it there for a little bit. Because remember, you're not going to have these huge combo turns, especially as Prism. You're just trying to lay haymakers over and over, right? Haymaker, 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 and either they block and then you deck them out, or eventually you just come over the top. And again, don't be afraid to stick that in your arsenal, because don't be an idiot like me. You can get it out of your arsenal. You can, right? You can. All right, let's move on to Boltyn. So Boltyn's weapons available are going to be Hatchet of Body, Hatchet of Mind. I do want to warn you, in this format with the consistency, if you get Raiden, I don't know that you actually take Raiden, because you have to charge. You have to charge and they have to block you in order, because if you sit down with Raiden, they're not going to block you. And if you're playing against Boltyn, that's actually one of the better ways to really hurt him in this format, is to just not block him. You take 3 a turn and then you clap back harder. Boltyn's really hard to play in this format. In my opinion, really hard to play in this format. That said, some of his attack, Courageous Steel Hands, you're going to see those flying around the table, or at least in my experience, they kept coming around the table. Very, very strong card, but again, he has to lose a card. He doesn't block well, and if you don't block him, he doesn't do as well. So it's like this giant catch-22 for him. I personally wouldn't advise going into Boltyn unless you have a lot of reps with him and you're very familiar with the pool. That said, if you get a Via the Vanguard early, a well set up Via the Vanguard into hatchets is pretty backbreaking. So see what you get in your pool and make the call. But, Take Flight up there is obviously a good card, but how many Take Flights realistically you're going to get? A couple, again, and it's great with Raiden, but you're not playing Raiden, you're playing Hatchet, so then you need a blue on that. Anyway, y'all track. All right, let's move into Chane. So Chane is, on my Monarch weekend, I played Prism. and this was way back in the day. I played Prism and I played Chane, and I won with Prism, and I got second place with Chane. And Chane is very, very, very strong until he's kind of like the Runeblade thing, which I think is amplified in Limited. He can just kind of kill himself, right? And Chane he does have to do his thing quite often because you don't have snappies in this format. You don't have a lot of the other synergies for Go Again. He has to shackle quite a bit. You chuck a lot of cards, and honestly, if you're playing against him, it's really not that difficult to, if he's not coming at you with a bunch of Arcane, kind of as we spoke to above, it's not that difficult to fatigue him. It can absolutely be done. So if you're the Chane player, make sure that you're not just necessarily popping off every turn. Sometimes you want to put something in arsenal to make sure you can pop off even harder, right? And Tremor of Arathiel is a rare, but that's also a very strong card that people won't necessarily be taking. So that might be like a mid-pack pick type thing. But honestly, if you've decided you're on Chane and it's like pack 2, probably grab that card. Pretty strong. Just throwing it out there. All right, last up, Levia. So I think is it fair to say she's the hardest one to play? Maybe. Probably between her and Boltyn. Medax is actually pretty good. The problem with Medax in this format is it's just really hard to get what you need in terms of the number of 6s. It is. Because it also needs yellow to swing, which granted you're pitching and all that, but it's really tough. And then you also are decking yourself while you're doing that, and you're putting your blood debt in. And there's just a lot of things that have to go right for her. That said, she can pop, which is really nice. But I think it's really hard to play her. If you are playing against her, try to go aggressive, because once you force her into must block range, she just kind of kills herself. That said, you look at key cards for her like Endless Maw, could just come in for 9. Like, that's kind of a thing in this format. I do like Smash with Big Tree. I know it doesn't block, but Smash with Big Tree, brute, right? So I think those are really strong picks. And there's one of the advantages of playing her is that not as many people, well, at least back then, I know a lot of people are excited for her and all the new shadow cards and the new sets, so that may skew people in their decisions, especially because we're focusing casual here, which is something to consider. People may be focusing her just because they want to. I think she's very difficult to play, and I think she's very difficult to get well. I think kind of the general idea in like this was like, I think it was supposed to be like 3 to 4 prisms, maybe like 1 to 2 Boltyns, 2 to 3 chains, and then 1 Levia out of each pod. I think it was kind of their breakdown, and then Levia could, get her 2 wins into her prisms, and then probably lose to the other 2. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that below, as whether they actually have a tactical design like that or not. So anyway, we've been going at this for quite a while, but a lot to talk about here. And again, I just wanted to kind of approach this in these are the cards I should be looking for, instead of here's how to do this, here's when I can pivot and all that. Again, there are great resources out there for all of that if you want to really go deep into it against competitive thing. But again, you could show up and be playing folks who've never drafted this set before ever on Saturday, and I think it's probably best to just go in, have a casual attitude about it, say, hey, this is what I'm going to do to maximize my event, and see how it goes, and have a great time. So anyway, thanks folks for joining. You can always let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If nothing else, folks, go Commando.